Your habits are the blueprint of your life. Every decision, every action, every day is the result of what you repeat without thinking. The problem is most people let their habits control them instead of controlling their habits. Today, you take back that power. Today, you stop living by default and start designing every day with intention. This audiobook will teach you the strategies, discipline, and mindset to master your habits and master your life. Chapter 1. Identify the habits that control you. Most people live on autopilot. They wake up, they act, they react, and they wonder why life feels chaotic, unproductive, or unfulfilling. You have a choice. You can remain unconscious, or you can become aware. That's the key. Awareness is not passive. It is active. It is deliberate. It is the first step toward mastery. Your biggest enemy is not external. It is the invisible patterns that dictate your behavior without your permission. It's the routines, the cues, the triggers that you fail to notice. You have a choice. You can ignore them, or you can map them. You don't need permission to observe yourself. That's the key. See the invisible controls. Most destructive habits operate quietly. They hide in plain sight. They lurk in repetition. They masquerade as convenience, comfort, or necessity. Every skipped task, every delayed decision, every reactive response is a symptom. Every repeated complaint, every emotional flare-up, every mindless scroll is a signal. You have a choice. You can dismiss these signals as unimportant, or you can recognize them as your patterns in action. You don't need permission to notice. That's the key. Your daily life is a mirror. Actions repeat themselves. Choices become predictable. Outcomes are predictable too. It's not about luck. It's about awareness. It's not about blaming circumstances. It's about seeing the chains you carry. You have a choice. You can remain blind to your own defaults, or you can confront them with ruthless honesty. You don't need permission to analyze your life. That's the key. Map the triggers. Habits are not random. They follow cues. They respond to triggers. They repeat in cycles you may not notice. Every thought, every action, every reaction can be traced. Every emotional spike has a cause. Every procrastination has a pattern. You have a choice. You can accept surface behavior as reality, or you can trace the underlying cause. You don't need permission to investigate your mind. That's the key. The inner warrior maps these triggers. He knows which events, people, and situations prompt distraction, anger, or avoidance. He doesn't wait for change to happen. He illuminates the patterns that control him and confronts them head-on. You have a choice. You can stay unaware and be controlled, or you can see the cause and reclaim control. You don't need permission to chart your own mind. That's the key. Routines reveal the truth. Your daily routines are revealing. They tell stories you don't consciously acknowledge. They show where you compromise, procrastinate, or surrender. Some routines are harmless. Others are destructive. Some reinforce discipline. Others reinforce weakness. It's not about judgment. It's about observation. It's not about guilt. It's about clarity. You have a choice. You can ignore your daily patterns, or you can examine them like data, without emotion. You don't need permission to see yourself clearly. That's the key. Every repeated action builds identity. Every ignored cue strengthens unwanted behavior. Every habitual choice compounds over time. You have a choice. You can surrender to the invisible forces of habit, or you can name them, see them, and begin the process of dismantling them. You don't need permission to reclaim your mind. That's the key. The power of honest observation. Honest observation is uncomfortable. It requires brutal self-honesty. It requires admitting patterns you've ignored. It forces you to confront truths you've hidden from yourself. But awareness is power. Seeing the triggers is the first step to breaking them. Naming the enemy is the first step to defeating it. You have a choice. You can stay comfortable in denial, Or you can accept the truth and start the transformation. You don't need permission to face reality. That's the key. Most people blame motivation. Most people blame luck. Most people blame circumstances. The truth is simple. Your habits dictate your outcomes. Your patterns control your results. Your daily actions define your destiny. You have a choice. You can pretend you are powerless. Or you can take ownership of your behavior. You don't need permission to be responsible. That's the key. Chapter 2. Break the cycle of automatic behavior. Most people live as slaves to repetition. They repeat the same actions, the same thoughts, the same mistakes. They call it routine. It's really autopilot. You have a choice. You can continue unconsciously, or you can break the loop. That's the key. Repetition is powerful. It creates habits. Habits create identity. Identity determines destiny. You have a choice. You can let habits run your life, or you can take command. You don't need permission to interrupt the cycle. That's the key. Recognize the automatic. Most loops operate below the surface. You don't notice scrolling, complaining, reacting, or procrastinating. You think it's harmless. It's not. Automatic behaviors consume energy. They steal focus. They erode discipline. You have a choice. You can ignore them, or you can observe them ruthlessly. You don't need permission to see yourself clearly. That's the key. Pause. Observe. Recognize. Every repeated action tells a story about your identity. Every automatic response signals a mental default. Every unnoticed habit strengthens your comfort zone, not your potential. You have a choice. You can stay blind to the loops, or you can confront them and reclaim your control. You don't need permission to lead your mind. That's the key. Interrupt the automatic loop. Awareness is not enough. Recognition without action is wasted energy. Breaking the loop requires a deliberate pause. A pause before reaction. A pause before thought. A pause before choice. Every moment you pause is a moment of power. Every pause interrupts the cycle. Every pause gives you the space to decide intentionally. You have a choice. You can react unconsciously, or you can pause and choose your response. You don't need permission to regain control. That's the key. It's not about perfection. It's about interruption. It's not about elimination of all habit. It's about conscious engagement with every repeated action. You have a choice. You can drift through life on autopilot, or you can pause and act with purpose. You don't need permission to act intentionally. That's the key. Replace mindless routines. Interrupting is the start. Replacement is the transformation. Every loop you break leaves a vacuum. Fill it with intention. Fill it with discipline. Fill it with actions that reinforce growth. Mindless scrolling becomes reading with purpose. Reactive anger becomes deliberate calm. Procrastination becomes execution. Or you can replace them with purposeful alternatives. You don't need permission to redesign your life. That's the key. Discipline through consistency. Repetition is the engine of habit. But it's neutral. It doesn't care if it builds strength or weakness. You don't have to react to every impulse. You don't have to follow every cue. You can decide what deserves your energy. Consistency transforms intention into identity. Every small repeated choice shapes the person you become. Every conscious loop replaced with intentional action reinforces your discipline. It's not about a single heroic effort. It's about the daily, repeated commitment. It's not about motivation. It's about choice and repetition. You have a choice. You can allow unconscious loops to dictate your day, or you can reinforce deliberate habits that strengthen your character. You don't need permission to own your routines. That's the key. The power of conscious habits. Conscious habits create freedom. They free you from reaction. They free you from drift. They free you from mental chaos. When every repeated action is intentional, your life gains structure. Your energy is protected. Your priorities are aligned. Your influence over outcomes increases. It's not about rigidity. It's about intentional design. It's not about suppressing instincts. It's about directing them with purpose. You have a choice. You can remain passive in your habits. Or you can build conscious loops that reinforce your goals. You don't need permission to master your routines. That's the key. Most of life is repetition. Most of life is unconscious. Most of life is habit disguised as routine. You have a choice. You can surrender to the loops. Or you can observe, pause, and redirect. You don't need permission to interrupt the cycles that control you. That's the key. Awareness gives insight. Pausing gives power. Replacement gives transformation. Name the loops. Pause before reaction. Replace mindless habits with intentional actions. Every repetition becomes a tool instead of a trap. You mastered the loops. Now, let's take the next step and anchor your day, your energy, and your focus with unshakable discipline. Chapter 3. Build keystone habits first. Some actions seem small. Some habits feel inconsequential. Yet, certain habits are different. They create ripples. They affect every area of life. You have a choice. You can chase low-impact habits. Or you can focus on the keystone actions that shape everything else. You don't need their permission to prioritize what matters. That's the key. The power of one habit. One habit can transform your energy. One habit can elevate your discipline. One habit can dictate your productivity. Keystone habits are not optional. They are leverage. They pull other behaviors into alignment. You have a choice. You can scatter your efforts. Or you can identify and commit to the keystone actions that amplify results. You don't need permission to restructure your day around impact. That's the key. These habits don't ask for attention. They demand it. They define your priorities even when motivation fails. You have a choice. You can react to the trivial. Or you can invest in the foundational. You don't need their permission to act on what matters most. That's the key. Productivity habits. Some keystone habits create momentum. They prime your mind for focus and energy. They determine whether your day is wasted or productive. They are deceptively simple. They are consistent. They are non-negotiable. You have a choice. You can wait for inspiration. Or you can anchor your productivity in repeatable, high-impact routines. You don't need permission to take command of your time. That's the key. Productivity keystones can be as simple as structured mornings, intentional planning, priority execution. The actions themselves are not heroic. Their power is in consistency. You have a choice. You can drift through hours. Or you can commit to habits that multiply every action. You don't need their permission to harness leverage. That's the key. Energy habits. Your body dictates your mind. Your energy dictates your clarity. Keystone energy habits shape how you perform and respond. Exercise, nutrition, and sleep are more than routines. They are leverage points. They ripple across focus, emotional stability, and mental toughness. You have a choice. You can ignore your body. Or you can honor it as a keystone for your mental discipline. You don't need permission to demand vitality from yourself. That's the key. Energy habits are not indulgence. They are strategy. They are the foundation upon which discipline stands. You have a choice. You can postpone taking care of yourself. Or you can let energy be your leverage. You don't need permission to strengthen your core. That's the key. Discipline habits. Discipline begets freedom. Keystone habits reinforce control over your actions. They determine whether you act on impulse or purpose. Small choices create compounding effects. Delayed gratification becomes second nature. Focus becomes effortless. Consistency becomes identity. You have a choice. You can let weakness define you. Or you can reinforce keystone habits that cement your control. You don't need permission to hold yourself accountable. That's the key. Keystone discipline habits are simple in execution. They are repeated. They are non-negotiable. They are unglamorous but indispensable. You have a choice. You can be swayed by temptation, or you can anchor your life in habits that elevate. You don't need permission to sculpt your will. That's the key. The multiplier effect. Keystone habits do more than influence one domain. They spill over into relationships, decisions, and opportunities. A morning routine builds focus and clarity. Clarity sharpens decisions. Decisions shape results. Results reinforce confidence. Confidence strengthens identity. You have a choice. You can act randomly, or you can rely on habits that multiply impact across your life. You don't need permission to engineer influence through action. That's the key. Keystone habits create leverage that ordinary effort cannot match. They reduce the chaos of life. They streamline decisions. They make discipline automatic. You have a choice. You can wander through reactive living, or you can harness keystone habits to shape your environment, energy, and identity. You don't need permission to wield influence through habit. That's the key. Chapter 4. Use triggers to your advantage. Your surroundings shape your behavior. Your environment dictates your focus. Your cues trigger habits without your conscious input. You have a choice. You can leave things to chance, or you can manipulate your environment to work for you. You don't need their permission to structure life around your growth. That's the key. Cues drive actions. Every habit starts with a cue. A cue triggers an automatic response. It's a mental shortcut. When your environment is cluttered, your mind is cluttered. When distractions are everywhere, focus becomes fragile. When cues reinforce bad behavior, self-discipline struggles. You have a choice. You can ignore cues, or you can recognize their power and design them deliberately. You don't need permission to eliminate triggers that weaken you. That's the key. Cues are invisible until you notice them. They pull you into repetition. They keep you stuck. Awareness of triggers is the first step toward mastery. You have a choice. You can react to your surroundings, or you can shape them to serve your goals. You don't need permission to bend the environment to your will. That's the key. Environment reinforces habits. Environment is habit leverage. It either supports your growth or undermines it. It does not negotiate. Clear spaces create clarity. Organized areas create efficiency. Supportive surroundings create automatic behavior aligned with your intentions. You have a choice. You can drift in chaos, or you can establish conditions that make discipline inevitable. You don't need permission to optimize your environment. That's the key. Good habits thrive when cues are obvious. Bad habits weaken when obstacles exist. Leverage works silently but powerfully. You have a choice. You can allow frictionless bad habits, or you can insert friction that discourages them. You don't need permission to shape your day through design. That's the key. Simplicity is power. Small changes yield massive results. Move temptations out of sight. Place reminders of priorities where you can't miss them. The environment is a coach. It nudges you toward action without willpower. It makes discipline easier than resisting. You have a choice. You can leave life unstructured, or you can design clarity and momentum into every space. You don't need permission to create a life that reinforces strength. That's the key. Simplicity magnifies impact. You don't need complex systems. You need a deliberate, lean environment. Every object, every space, every cue should support you. You have a choice. You can let disorder dictate outcomes, or you can let structure enforce consistency. You don't need permission to master the signals around you. Automatic behavior through design. Designing the environment turns effort into habit. It makes good behavior inevitable. It removes daily negotiation. Automatic behaviors free mental energy for growth. They prevent decision fatigue. They prevent compromise. You have a choice. You can spend willpower constantly, or you can arrange life so that your choices reinforce your identity. You don't need permission to leverage surroundings for automatic success. That's the key. Keystone habits become unstoppable when the environment aligns. Focus deepens. Energy stabilizes. Results multiply. You have a choice. You can struggle with frictionless distraction. Or you can craft frictionless habits that pull you forward. You don't need permission to dominate your context. That's the key. The ripple effect. A single environmental adjustment affects multiple domains. Clear desk, focused mind. Organized space, fewer errors. Accessible tools, consistent execution. You have a choice. You can wait for willpower. Or you can create conditions where success happens automatically. You don't need permission to influence outcomes with design. That's the key. The ripple extends beyond habits. Productivity increases. Emotional control strengthens. Discipline becomes identity. You have a choice. You can ignore the silent forces around you. Or you can command them to reinforce who you want to be. You don't need permission to make your environment a partner in growth. That's the key. Chapter 5. Discipline beats motivation. Motivation is fragile. It rises and falls like waves. It is fleeting, unpredictable, and unreliable. You have a choice. You can chase motivation. Or you can rely on something stronger. You don't need their permission to choose consistency. That's the key. Discipline is the foundation. Discipline is non-negotiable. It does not wait for mood swings. It does not ask permission. You have a choice. You can hope for energy. Or you can act regardless. You don't need their permission to act with discipline. That's the key. Habits are the backbone of performance. Routines remove doubt. Structure removes hesitation. You have a choice. You can drift, reacting to whims. Or you can build a framework that ensures action every day. You don't need permission to make structure your ally. That's the key. Routines outlast feelings. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is a fire. Habits fan that fire until it burns continuously. Routines define your life. Schedules dictate your outcomes. Systems protect your progress. You have a choice. You can wait for energy to arrive. Or you can execute regardless of feelings. You don't need their permission to act on purpose. That's the key. Consistency compounds. One day of discipline is temporary. 1 week is noticeable. 1 month becomes unshakable. You have a choice. You can rely on unreliable emotions. Or you can trust systems that always produce results. You don't need permission to make your actions inevitable. That's the key. Acting without feeling. The strongest people act even when they don't want to. They act when tired. They act when distracted. They act when afraid. You have a choice. You can wait for desire. Or you can act with intention. You don't need their permission to enforce action. That's the key. Every action strengthens identity. Every consistent effort reinforces belief. Every habitual choice shapes character. You have a choice. You can be reactive. Or you can be proactive. You don't need their permission to dictate your life. That's the key. Systems make consistency automatic. Motivation cannot be scheduled. Discipline can. Systems remove decision fatigue. They make success automatic. You have a choice. You can live in chaos. Or you can build routines that guide every day. You don't need their permission to structure your life. That's the key. When you have a system, excuses fall away. When you have a routine, doubt has no home. When you have a schedule, hesitation disappears. You have a choice. You can rely on fickle feelings. Or you can depend on intentional structure. You don't need their permission to enforce daily wins. That's the key. Discipline is freedom. Ironically, discipline creates freedom. Freedom from indecision. Freedom from chaos. Freedom from regret. You have a choice. You can surrender to impulses. Or you can act consistently to build unshakable control. You don't need their permission to claim mastery over your life. That's the key. Relying on motivation is slavery to emotion. Relying on discipline is mastery over self. You have a choice. You can chase every wave of feeling, or you can anchor in daily action. You don't need their permission to stabilize your life. That's the key. Repetition builds resilience. Every repeated action strengthens the neural path. Every habit compounds over time. Every disciplined day trains the mind and body. You have a choice. You can leave growth to chance, or you can create unstoppable momentum through repetition. You don't need their permission to shape your destiny. That's the key. Repetition makes discipline easier. Consistency builds confidence. Structure becomes second nature. You have a choice. You can fight feelings every day, or you can act in alignment with systems that support you. You don't need their permission to create automatic excellence. That's the key. Chapter 6: Track, Measure, and Adjust. Progress does not happen by accident. Results do not appear without measurement. Action alone is not enough. You have a choice. You can act blindly, or you can monitor what actually works. Awareness is the first step. Most people drift. They perform routines, make decisions, and chase goals without checking results. They assume that motion equals progress. You have a choice. You can keep guessing, or you can become aware. You don't need their permission to know where you stand. That's the key. Awareness is not optional. It is the foundation of improvement. You cannot fix what you cannot see. You have a choice. You can blame circumstances, or you can observe reality. You don't need their permission to face the truth. That's the key. Measurement creates clarity. Metrics are powerful. They remove assumptions. They strip away excuses. You have a choice. You can rely on feelings and opinions, or you can measure results objectively. You don't need their permission to count, record, and review. That's the key. Even simple numbers tell a story. Minutes spent, representatives completed, pages read, calls made. Each data point reflects your choices, habits, and discipline. You have a choice. You can float aimlessly, or you can track actions that matter. You don't need their permission to follow the truth of your own results. That's the key. Measurement is not judgment. It is information. It is a mirror. It is clarity. You have a choice. You can ignore results and hope for the best, or you can confront reality and adapt. You don't need their permission to act on facts. That's the key. Accountability accelerates growth. Tracking alone is not enough. Accountability makes progress unavoidable. You have a choice. You can operate in secrecy, or you can share metrics with yourself or others. You don't need their permission to create systems of accountability. That's the key. When you report results, even to yourself, you feel the weight of action. When numbers are visible, excuses fade. When outcomes are clear, decisions sharpen. You have a choice. You can hide from truth, or you can embrace responsibility. You don't need their permission to own every action. That's the key. Accountability magnifies discipline. It transforms ordinary effort into unstoppable momentum. It turns intentions into results. You have a choice. You can drift with vague goals, or you can anchor your progress in measurable reality. You don't need their permission to track, review, and advance. That's the key. Adaptation ensures continuous improvement. Progress is not linear. Habits fail. Energy falters. Unexpected challenges appear. You have a choice. You can quit when results slow, or you can adjust strategies. You don't need their permission to course correct. That's the key. Improvement comes from iteration. Measurement highlights gaps. Awareness informs change. Adjustment ensures growth continues. You have a choice. You can resist adaptation, or you can embrace it as essential. You don't need their permission to refine your approach. That's the key. The most successful people are not those who never fail. They are those who see results, recognize gaps, and adapt relentlessly. They turn every obstacle into data. They transform every weakness into a learning opportunity. You have a choice. You can see setbacks as shame, or you can see them as intelligence. You don't need their permission to extract lessons from failure. That's the key. Repetition builds trust with self. Monitoring progress reinforces habit. It trains self-awareness. It develops trust in your own ability to improve. You have a choice. You can ignore your patterns. Or you can watch, measure, and act consistently. You don't need their permission to hold yourself accountable. That's the key. Every tracked action strengthens identity. Every adjusted habit sharpens focus. Every reviewed outcome builds confidence. You have a choice. You can float through life aimlessly. Or you can anchor every day in clarity, measurement, and responsibility. You don't need their permission to prove to yourself that you are capable. That's the key. Chapter 7. Replace. Don't just remove. Breaking a habit is not enough. Stopping is only half the battle. You have a choice. You can quit and leave emptiness behind. Or you can replace and strengthen. You don't need their permission to choose the stronger path. That's the key. Why removal alone fails. Most people try to quit by saying no to themselves. They try to eliminate, to abstain, to resist. At first, it feels noble. For a day, a week, a month, maybe longer. But the void grows. The brain craves comfort, habit, reward. Resistance alone creates tension. Tension leads to relapse. You have a choice. You can continue fighting emptiness. Or you can fill the space with something productive. You don't need their permission to outsmart your own impulses. That's the key. Stopping is temporary. Replacement is permanent. This is not opinion. It is reality. You have a choice. You can rely on willpower alone. Or you can build structure and alternatives. You don't need their permission to act strategically. That's the key. The power of alternatives. A habit serves a purpose, whether good or bad. It fills boredom. It relieves stress. It satisfies desire. You have a choice. You can ignore the need behind the habit. Or you can redirect it. You don't need their permission to respond intelligently. That's the key. Replacement is not cheating. It is skill. It is strategy. It is discipline in action. The new behavior must satisfy the same underlying need. It must occupy the energy, attention, and reward previously consumed by the old habit. You have a choice. You can resist and resent the void. Or you can act with intention and purpose. You don't need their permission to decide what fills your space. That's the key. Sustainability is built on structure. Random replacements fail. Half-hearted substitutes fail. Temporary fixes fail. You have a choice. You can wing it and hope for the best. Or you can plan replacements strategically. You don't need their permission to structure your success. That's the key. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small, intentional actions repeated daily create permanence. The brain craves familiarity. The more you feed it productive routines, the less it returns to destructive ones. You have a choice. You can let instinct dominate. Or you can guide it with conscious, repeated action. You don't need their permission to train yourself. That's the key. Habits are energy patterns. A habit is not just a behavior. It is a pathway in the brain. It is a loop of cue, craving, action, reward. You have a choice. You can cut the path and leave it empty. Or you can build a new path in its place. You don't need their permission to rewire yourself. That's the key. Every time you replace instead of simply removing, you reinforce control. Every time you act deliberately, you strengthen identity. Every time you fail to replace, the old habit gains power silently. You have a choice. You can allow gaps to weaken you. Or you can fill every gap with strength. You don't need their permission to fortify your mind. Replacement requires intentionality. Not all substitutes are equal. Some behaviors simply distract. Others build growth, resilience, and self-mastery. You have a choice. You can replace with convenience. Or you can replace with power. You don't need their permission to choose wisely. That's the key. The replacement must be consistent with your larger goals. It must serve your highest vision of yourself, not your momentary comfort. You have a choice. You can sacrifice long-term strength for temporary relief. Or you can endure discomfort with strategy. You don't need their permission to prioritize growth. That's the key. Identity drives lasting change. Replacement is not just action. It is statement. Every new behavior signals who you are becoming. You have a choice. You can drift with old habits. Or you can redefine yourself through deliberate replacements. You don't need their permission to declare your identity. That's the key. Habits shape your sense of self. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are. Replacement creates alignment between action and identity. Elimination alone leaves misalignment, confusion, and relapse. You have a choice. You can act without direction. Or you can act with deliberate self-definition. You don't need their permission to embody the strongest version of yourself. That's the key. Repetition makes replacement natural. Replacement works only through repetition. Daily, consistent action embeds the new behavior. Your brain rewires itself. The old habit loses dominance. You have a choice. You can be inconsistent. Or you can be relentless. You don't need their permission to persist. That's the key. Every repetition strengthens new identity. Every repetition weakens old dependency. Every repetition reminds you that you are in control. You have a choice. You can wait for motivation. Or you can enforce discipline through repetition. You don't need their permission to decide your own course. That's the key. Chapter 8. Harness the power of small wins. Transformation is rarely explosive. It is seldom dramatic. You have a choice. You can wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect motivation. Or you can start small. You don't need their permission to begin. That's the key. Big results are built quietly. Incremental progress compounds. Every small action adds weight. Every repetition strengthens identity. Every day of discipline grows momentum. You have a choice. You can chase the illusion of overnight success. Or you can commit to consistency. You don't need their permission to choose the longer, stronger path. That's the key. Why small wins matter. Small wins are not meaningless. They are invisible deposits into your future. A single victory may seem insignificant. Yet, repeated, it becomes unstoppable. You have a choice. You can underestimate the power of microprogress. Or you can respect it, honor it, and leverage it. You don't need their permission to harness compounding. That's the key. Momentum begins with tiny victories. Brushing your teeth daily. Reading a single page. Completing one focused task. Each action reinforces your ability to act again. You have a choice. You can ignore these steps as trivial. Or you can see them as building blocks of mastery. You don't need their permission to recognize what is powerful. That's the key. The mental shift. Most people focus on the outcome. They obsess over the finish line. They measure progress by massive leaps, not daily steps. You have a choice. You can let impatience sabotage progress. Or you can shift focus to the small wins you can control. You don't need their permission to redefine what matters. That's the key. Small victories are measurable. They are controllable. They create confidence that scales over time. The brain celebrates success, even incremental success. Each win releases dopamine, reinforcing behavior. You have a choice. You can ignore psychological leverage. Or you can use it to your advantage. You don't need their permission to engineer your own momentum. That's the key. Consistency beats intensity. Trying to do too much too soon burns out even the strongest willpower. Intensity fades. Consistency lasts. You have a choice. You can chase intensity, burning brightly and fading fast. Or you can chase consistency, lasting and unstoppable. You don't need their permission to prioritize the long-term strategy. That's the key. Small actions repeated daily build automaticity. Momentum becomes self-sustaining. Your environment, choices, and habits begin to reinforce themselves. You act without thinking. Progress becomes inevitable. You have a choice. You can rely on motivation, or you can rely on routine. You don't need their permission to create systems that work. That's the key. Celebrate the micro-victories. Acknowledging small wins is not vanity. It is strategy. You have a choice. You can ignore achievements until they feel big enough. Or you can reward incremental progress. You don't need their permission to reinforce positive patterns. That's the key. Recognition fuels repetition. Momentum grows faster when wins are visible. Every completed task, every step forward, signals competence. Your identity shifts from someone who attempts to someone who succeeds. You have a choice. You can measure yourself against others. Or you can measure yourself against yesterday. You don't need their permission to track improvement internally. That's the key. Compounding impact. One action multiplies with the next. One win increases the likelihood of another. Consistency compounds into skill. Skill compounds into results. Results compound into reputation. You have a choice. You can wait for an immediate outcome. Or you can trust the exponential power of time. You don't need their permission to let small actions grow. That's the key. Compound interest works in finance. It works in habits, too. A 1% improvement daily is 37 times better over a year. The numbers don't lie. Small wins are the secret currency of transformation. You have a choice. You can ignore the math and hope for luck. Or you can leverage compounding intentionally. You don't need their permission to play the long game. That's the key. Turning action into identity. Small wins do more than produce results. They change who you are. Every repeated action signals identity to your subconscious. Consistency creates belief. Belief creates courage. Courage creates habit. You have a choice. You can act inconsistently and remain defined by weakness. Or you can repeat and define yourself by discipline. You don't need their permission to own your identity. That's the key. Momentum does not wait for perfection. It rewards persistence. Every small, deliberate action reinforces the strongest version of yourself. You have a choice. You can wait for motivation. Or you can start small and compound endlessly. You don't need their permission to take the first step. Chapter 9. Overcome resistance and avoid plateaus. Growth is not linear. It is uneven, jagged, and uncomfortable. You have a choice. You can quit when things feel stagnant. Or you can push forward. You don't need their permission to persist. That's the key. Plateaus are natural. They are not failure. They are not weakness. They are proof that you are leveling up. You have a choice. You can see stagnation as a wall. Or you can see it as a signal to rise. You don't need their permission to redefine your limits. That's the key. Why plateaus exist. Every habit, skill, and discipline has a ceiling. The ceiling feels like a plateau. Progress slows. Motivation dips. Confidence wavers. You have a choice. You can treat the slowdown as a verdict. Or you can treat it as part of the process. You don't need their permission to stay committed. That's the key. Plateaus are the body, mind, and environment adjusting to higher standards. They are the sign that your actions are demanding more of you. This is where growth lives. Right at the edge of discomfort. Right beyond what feels easy. You have a choice. You can step back and retreat. Or you can lean in and accelerate. You don't need their permission to face resistance. That's the key. The danger of quitting. Most people quit at plateaus. They assume the effort is wasted. They confuse stagnation with failure. You have a choice. You can quit and remain average. Or you can persist and redefine what is possible. You don't need their permission to defy expectations. That's the key. Quitting reinforces weakness. Persistence reinforces strength. Small, repeated pushes break through invisible walls. Every day you push forward builds momentum. Every day you quit reinforces limitation. You have a choice. You can let discomfort dictate your trajectory. Or you can let discipline dictate your trajectory. You don't need their permission to control your direction. That's the key. Recognizing the plateau. Plateaus are invisible if you don't pay attention. They manifest as frustration, restlessness, or boredom. You act. Nothing seems to change. You try harder. Results remain the same. You have a choice. You can blame luck, environment, or others. Or you can see this clearly as a plateau. You don't need their permission to name it for what it is. That's the key. Recognition is the first step. Awareness gives you control. If you don't see the plateau, you cannot climb past it. Seeing it allows deliberate action. It allows patience, persistence, and strategy. You have a choice. You can ignore subtle stagnation. Or you can acknowledge it and use it. You don't need their permission to take ownership. That's the key. The power of persistence. Persistence is not glamorous. It is not celebrated. It is quiet, steady, and repeated. You have a choice. You can chase the excitement of sudden change. Or you can honor the slow, steady push. You don't need their permission to persevere. That's the key. Breaking through a plateau is like breaking a dam. Water gathers behind the wall of stagnation. Every push cracks the barrier. Every repeated effort wears down resistance. Eventually, momentum surges. Progress flows again. You have a choice. You can retreat at the first sign of resistance. Or you can embrace discomfort and break through. You don't need their permission to push harder than yesterday. That's the key. Strategic pushing. Pushing through plateaus is deliberate. It is not random effort. You have a choice. You can fight blindly. Or you can push with strategy, intent, and focus. You don't need their permission to plan your next move. That's the key. Look at patterns. Notice weak points. Use them to guide your next push. Even small adjustments can break the ceiling. Persistence magnifies impact when combined with insight. You have a choice. You can act haphazardly. Or you can act with precision and awareness. You don't need their permission to optimize your effort. That's the key. Mental toughness. Plateaus test more than your skill. They test your mindset. They test patience, confidence, and resilience. You have a choice. You can crumble under frustration. Or you can embrace challenge as a sign of growth. You don't need their permission to train your mind. That's the key. Mental toughness is forged in discomfort. Discipline becomes habit. Resistance becomes familiar. And what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. You have a choice. You can avoid stress and stagnation. Or you can face it, repeatedly, and grow stronger. You don't need their permission to become resilient. That's the key. Reinforcing discipline. Plateaus are the proving ground of discipline. They separate those who speak from those who act. You have a choice. You can wait for the plateau to pass. Or you can act through it, shaping strength from resistance. You don't need their permission to demonstrate grit. That's the key. Each day of pushing reinforces identity. You become someone who does not quit. You become someone who thrives in discomfort. You become unstoppable. You have a choice. You can rely on luck, motivation, or inspiration. Or you can rely on repeated, intentional action. You don't need their permission to define yourself. Chapter 10. Make habit mastery a lifestyle. True mastery is internal. It does not rely on motivation. It does not bend to circumstance. It exists quietly, persistently, within your daily actions. You have a choice. Every morning, every hour, every moment. You can follow impulse, or you can follow principle. That is the key. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. Most people fail because they treat discipline as a momentary effort. They try for a week, a month, or a project, and when the immediate discomfort hits, they quit. They think mastery is grand gestures. It is not. Mastery is mundane. Repeat it over and over until it becomes invisible. Until it becomes you. You don't need their permission. You don't need applause, recognition, or validation. You only need commitment to yourself, to your standards, to your inner voice that says, I will do what must be done, whether I feel like it or not. It's not about willpower. It's about design. It's not about resistance. It's about structure. You don't fight habits. You build systems that make the right actions inevitable. You anchor your life in routines that remove choice from the moments that matter. You don't debate. You act. Repetition is the engine of mastery. Doing once is effort. Doing repeatedly is identity. Doing consistently without debate is power. Look at every action in your day. Is it intentional? Or is it a reaction to the noise around you? Most habits operate in the background. Most actions are unconscious. Most of life is autopilot. Awareness is the first step toward mastery. You cannot change what you do not see. You cannot improve what you do not measure. Observe yourself. Track your choices. Notice your reactions. Every automatic response is a mirror showing you what controls you. Habit mastery is not punishment. It is freedom. It is freedom from chaos, from emotional hijacking, from wasted energy. When actions become automatic, you stop negotiating with yourself. Every choice is pre-decided. Every morning, every task, every commitment is reinforced by your system, not your mood. That's the key. Systems outweigh motivation. Routines beat inspiration. Discipline overcomes desire. You have a choice to follow the path of repetition, or to wander through life waiting for a feeling to tell you what to do. Choose wisely. True mastery creates momentum. Momentum compounds. Small, repeated actions build results far greater than occasional effort. A single disciplined choice today is one brick. A disciplined day is a wall. A disciplined year is a fortress. Each brick is invisible at first. Each wall seems fragile. But over time, the structure is unshakable. You don't need permission to build. You don't need anyone to believe in your process. It is your inner architecture, your personal fortress. The bricks are your habits. The mortar is your reflection and adjustment. The design is your vision for the person you are becoming. It's not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. Mastery is invisible. It is silent. It is slow. It is steady. It is relentless. Every failure is feedback. Every setback is information. Every stumble is an opportunity to reinforce the system, not abandon it. The world tests you. Your inner discipline responds. You have a choice. Let circumstances dictate your life, or let your mastered habits dictate your outcomes. That is the difference between reaction and control, between chance and intention. Habit mastery is liberation. When your actions align automatically with your values, choices become effortless. Distractions lose power. Temptation fades. Chaos has no leverage. Your environment, your routine, your mind, they are synchronized. You move through life with efficiency, focus, and unshakable direction. You have a choice. You can wait for motivation, or you can activate your system and let it carry you. You have a choice to argue with yourself, or you can act, consistently, repeatedly, until action is no longer a choice, it is instinct. That is the essence of mastery. It is internalized, invisible, reliable. It is not showy. It is not reactive. It is present in the small, mundane actions repeated without debate. You don't need permission to act. You don't need to wait for clarity. You don't need anyone else to validate your process. The system is enough. The repetition is enough. The habits are enough. It's not about the initial discomfort. It's about the long-term reinforcement. It's not about the first step. It's about the 1,000th step, taken even when no one is watching. It's not about the short-term reward. It's about identity transformation. You have a choice. Every moment, every day. Do you reinforce the system or weaken it? Do you follow impulse or principle? Do you act consciously or drift unconsciously? That is the difference between people who complain and people who command their lives. That is the difference between fleeting effort and permanent transformation. That is the difference between external validation and internal authority. Mastery is invisible. It is silent. It is unglamorous. And it is unstoppable. Habit mastery is not an endpoint. It is a foundation. A base upon which all power, focus, and freedom are built. It supports creativity, decision-making, energy, and clarity. It is the scaffolding for every high-level achievement. Without it, every effort is wasted. With it, every action compounds into exponential growth. The world does not notice. That is the beauty of mastery. It requires no applause. Chapter 11. Become the architect of your inner world. Nothing outside you will save you. Nothing outside you will sustain you. Lasting change is built from the inside out. Your life is not defined by your intentions. It is defined by your defaults. When pressure rises, when fatigue sets in, when emotion spikes, you do not rise to your goals. You fall to your systems. You fall to what you have trained yourself to do automatically. That is why mastery must move deeper, beyond habits, beyond routines, into identity. You are always becoming someone. With every repeated action, you cast a vote. Not for what you want, for who you are. Most people try to change outcomes. Few people change identity. And identity always wins. You do not rise early because you want success. You rise early because that is who you are. You do not train, focus, execute, and finish because it feels good. You do it because it is aligned with your internal standard. Standards are stronger than goals. Goals are temporary. Standards are permanent. A goal can be abandoned. A standard defines behavior. Decide who you are. Not once. Repeatedly. Daily. In the smallest actions that no one sees. Your inner world is architecture. Thoughts are the blueprint. Habits are the structure. Identity is the foundation. If the foundation is weak, no amount of motivation will save the structure. If the foundation is solid, pressure only strengthens it. You must design your inner environment deliberately. What you consume, what you tolerate, what you repeat, what you normalize, what you allow becomes law. What you repeat becomes truth. What you practice becomes automatic. Guard your inputs. Your mind is not neutral. It is programmable. Every conversation, every screen, every environment is shaping you, whether you consent or not. Mastery means you consent consciously. You act because it matches who you are. You stop because it violates your standard. That is power. The strongest people are not the loudest. They are the most internally ordered. Their emotions inform them, but do not command them. Their circumstances challenge them, but do not dictate them. They are self-led. Self-leadership is not intensity. It is consistency. It is doing the obvious, boring, necessary actions, without negotiation. Every day is a vote. Every action is training. Every repetition is identity reinforcement. You are either strengthening your inner architecture or allowing it to decay. There is no neutral. You do not need to overhaul your life. You need to protect your standards. You need to reinforce your systems. You need to act in alignment, again and again. When the inner world is stable, the outer world becomes manageable. Pressure no longer overwhelms you. Noise no longer distracts you. Emotion no longer hijacks you. You move with calm authority, with direction, with self-trust. This is not visible to others. That is the point. True power is quiet. True discipline is boring. True mastery is unseen. But its results are undeniable. Build your inner world deliberately. Protect it fiercely. Reinforce it daily. Because once your identity is aligned, once your habits are automatic, Once your standards are non-negotiable, nothing external can shake you. That is the final shift. From effort to embodiment. From discipline to identity. From habits to self-mastery. And once built, it does not collapse. It compounds. Chapter 12. Live as proof, not promise. At some point, words must end. Not because they are unimportant, but because they are incomplete without action. Most people live as promises. I will. One day. Soon. They carry intention like a badge, believing desire is enough to earn results. It is not. The world does not reward intention. It responds to evidence. Evidence is built quietly. Through repetition. Through follow-through. Through choices made when no one is watching and nothing is guaranteed. Mastery reaches its highest form when you stop explaining yourself. When your habits speak. When your consistency removes the need for justification. You are no longer becoming. You are being. This is where most people falter. They love the idea of transformation. They struggle with the reality of maintenance. Maintenance is not exciting. It is not dramatic. It does not feel like progress. And yet, this is where real power is forged. Anyone can change briefly. Few can remain. Remaining disciplined after the initial motivation fades is the mark of someone who has internalized mastery. This is not about pushing harder. It is about staying aligned longer. You no longer chase improvement. You protect stability. Stability creates leverage. Leverage creates freedom. When your systems run automatically, energy is released. Mental clutter fades. Decision fatigue disappears. You are no longer consumed by should I. You move directly to I will. That is maturity. That is control. Your life becomes predictable, not boring, but reliable. And reliability is rare. Reliable people are trusted. Reliable systems produce results. Reliable habits compound into extraordinary outcomes. You do not need intensity every day. You need alignment every day. Intensity burns out. Alignment endures. The disciplined life is not rigid. It is responsive without being reactive. You adapt without abandoning structure. You adjust without compromising standards. This is where mastery reveals its depth. Life will test you. Not once, but repeatedly. Stress will arrive unannounced. Fatigue will cloud judgment. Success will tempt complacency. Failure will tempt surrender. Each test asks the same question. Will you return to principle, or drift toward impulse? This is why mastery is never finished. It is maintained. Not through force. Through commitment. Commitment to the person you have chosen to be. You do not argue with yourself anymore. You do not renegotiate standards. You do not abandon structure because of mood. Emotion becomes data, not a directive. You feel fear, but act anyway. You feel resistance, but proceed calmly. You feel doubt, but rely on process. This is the difference between being driven and being grounded. Driven people push until they break. Grounded people move steadily and last. You are no longer trying to win days. You are building decades. This requires patience most people lack. Progress is no longer measured by excitement. It is measured by durability. Can your system withstand boredom? Can it survive success? Can it endure disappointment? If it can, then you are free. Freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the result of structure internalized. When discipline becomes identity, effort drops. When effort drops, consistency rises. When consistency rises, outcomes become inevitable. This is where mastery becomes invisible to you as well. You no longer feel disciplined. You simply act. You no longer feel controlled. You feel clear. Your habits no longer feel like effort. They feel like alignment. And alignment is calm. Calm is not weakness. It is stability under pressure. People will not understand this phase. They will see less talk, less explanation, less emotional fluctuation. They may mistake silence for stagnation, routine for limitation, consistency for lack of ambition. Let them. You are no longer performing growth. You are living it. Your confidence no longer needs validation. It is reinforced daily through evidence. Evidence compounds into self-trust. Self-trust eliminates hesitation. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" You ask, "Is this aligned?" That question simplifies life. Aligned actions feel clean. Misaligned actions feel heavy. Habits shape who you are, what you do, and the life you lead. You've learned to identify the habits that control you, break automatic cycles, focus on keystone behaviors, and leverage triggers to your advantage. You've seen why discipline beats motivation, how to track and adjust your progress, how to replace habits instead of just removing them, and why small wins create unstoppable momentum. You know how to push through resistance, overcome plateaus, and integrate habit mastery into a lifestyle of excellence. Your life is a reflection of your daily choices. From this moment, take control. Design your habits. Build your routines. Master your actions. Master your life. Start today, and do not stop.